to see you. Good to see you. Good to see you. How are you? Long time no see.
Nice to see you again.
Good to see you. How are you? Good to see you.
So we are ready whenever you are, Governor.
This is Senate Bill 6362. This bill is requested by the Superintendent of Public Instruction. We're happy about moving forward on our school funding and the McCleary decision, and I'm glad to sign this bill today. This bill advances the schedule for funding of the increased state salary allocations for school employees to the 2018 to 2019 school year, rather than phasing in over 2 school years. This was something I had proposed in my supplemental budget in my December budget. However, I am vetoing 2 sections. Section 402 would delay the implementation of state-funded professional learning days. Hobbling practices that improve student achievement is clearly contrary to the bill's intent and our goals. Section 408 moves forward by 1 year the requirement for OSPI to develop rules and budget procedures to ensure school districts provide separate accounting of state and local revenues. With this work underway, speeding up its development will jeopardize the long-term reliability of the accounting system and suspend the development of all other systems work. Thank you, Senator Wilmot and Representative Sullivan and all the members who worked diligently on this matter. We are free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much. Good job. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thanks for your work. Thank you. Thank you. Hey, how you doing back there? How you doing? Yeah, everybody Drew's got a million pens there. But thank you. We appreciate them.
Thank you again, sir.
Thank you so much. Hope you keep spinning.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Oh, definitely. Oh, yeah. Drew, everybody's getting one. We're pretty egalitarian here.
And I need a pen for this one.
Oh, well, definitely. Yes, definitely.
Thank you.
Hey, man.
Thank you very much.
Like your tie.
Thank you.
Nicely done.
Can you get a little pen?
Oh, sure. Do you have Drew's pen down here?
Thank you. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. Coming in, go. You're coming. Governor, you want to straighten your chair up here?
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Doing well.
Hey, Mike, how you doing? Haven't seen you for a while.
How are you doing?
Good to see you.
We got to stop meeting like this.
Some good bills last week, thanks to your leadership.
Yeah, I didn't make that one.
I'm sorry about it. I don't know how we started without you.
Yeah, well, the freeway makes a difference, and that's right.
I'm
Now,
really
if you could
sorry about
fix
that.
the freeway
Well,
for
we're
me.
working on that. We're working on that.
That's good.
How you doing? Good to see you. Good to see you. Hey, buddy. See you Saturday, huh? See you Saturday. Yep, we have it all set for Saturday.
Yep. Might want to kind of squeeze in on that side. Yep. There's room on the other side.
This House Bill 1237, this bill authorizes boards of trustees of community and technical colleges to provide additional compensation to academic employees that exceeds the amount of percentage established by the legislature. I'm vetoing Section 1, however, as it relates to matters that are budgetary in nature. Thanks, Representative Sells, for his work on this and a whole bunch of bills we signed the other day when he was stuck in traffic. But
You were stuck in traffic.
1, 2, and 3, and again, 1, 2.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you. Thank you sir. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Sir. Take care. Keep wearing those pins. Good to see you.
Thank you, Governor.
Jay, how are you? Nice to see you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Good to
You're all
see you,
faculty
Jay.
from
Oh,
different
good. Thank you.
so much.
No wonder we have such smart students.
Yeah, these are
Okay. Thank you. You guys from Highline? Yes, we are. That's my old school district. I went to Cascade Junior High School and Shore Elementary School.
Renton Technical College.
Technical College, yeah.
We had Bellevue, we got
Good.
here's
Good. How you doing? Steve Walsh. Good to see you. Thanks for being here. Glad to be there. Thank you. Got talent here. Thank you. How are you?
Okay, if I take a picture?
Yeah, no, that's maybe Angie will take it for us.
Would you from Lake Washington? You've been invited to speak at our commencement.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Amy going.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ready?
Thank you. And thank you. You're welcome.
Count of three. 1, 2, 3. Nice.
That's perfect.
Very nice.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Shake his head.
Thank you.
Hey, Larry. Larry.
Forgot their purse.
Black pin for that one. I'll take the blue one back. Yep.
Hey, Drew, can I ask you something? Hello, good to see you again. Good to see you again. How are you?
Nice to meet
Jim,
you.
good to see you again. How you been?
You're ready whenever you are.
This is House Bill 1561. This measure requires the Student Achievement Council to administer the Open Educational Resources Grant Pilot Program for the public four-year institutions of higher education. These are free educational materials and resources available to everyone. On V20 Section 3, however, the null and void clause is unnecessary as the supplemental budget funds the program. Thanks, Representative Frame, and anybody else working on this. Okay.
Go, 1, 2, and 3, and again, 1, 2, and 3.
Thanks, Aaron. Thank you.
Excellent.
Hello,
Thank you.
nice
Standing
to see
in
you. Good to see you.
Frame's stead.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, man. Good to see you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for this,
Thanks a
Governor.
lot. Thanks a lot.
Remember your bags, coats? Somebody left the purse.
Hey, man, how you doing, Roger? Good to see you.
Governor.
How are you?
Good to see you.
Good to see you. How are you, Jay? Good seeing you guys.
Come on in.
Good
Gather
seeing you.
around.
Trust that sponsor, you be careful about it. I think that's beginning. I don't know what the co-sponsor is. We'll get a couple of them shaking hands to show that. Oh, see, yeah.
here for House Bill 1783. We want to help people rebuild a productive and successful life after incarceration, both for their benefit and to help reduce recidivism. This legislation helps alleviate some of the financial burdens and hurdles that make it harder for men and women to get back on their feet, while also making sure we're prioritizing restitution and funding for victim services. Under this bill, a court may not impose costs on an offender who is indigent when sentenced. In addition, an offender cannot be sanctioned for failure to pay legal financial obligations unless the failure to pay is willful, and eliminates the interest on non-restitution legal financial obligations which had been accruing during the person's incarceration. I want to thank Jeff for his leadership on this, and I know a lot of people have worked for years on this issue, and I want to thank everybody behind me and everybody else who's worked on this. Happy to sign this bill. Thank you all. Thanks very much. Thank you.
I did the time thanks you very much. I did the time thanks you for the Spokane for formerly incarcerated people. All of our buddies. So.
Thanks for your work. I know it's going to be very productive. I know I can wear it. Very good. You still look so young. Hey, Jay, good to see you, man. How are you? Good, thank you.
We didn't get to shake your hand, Governor. On behalf of the Statewide Reentry Council, thank you very much.
Winona Stevens. We met at Centennial Accord.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for your leadership.
Thank you so much for your support of the tribes and around us.
I've been here 3 times now. I'm the one who took the bar exam. Remember, had to fight the state Supreme Court, and now I'll find out for
Come here, we do a good bill.
Yes, right? I'll be back. April 13th.
April 13th.
Yeah.
Good luck. Thank you, guys. Good luck to us all.
Thank you, Governor.
Take care.
Now we can save money.
This is awesome.
Okay, we're pulling for you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Get your pins that you can sit out through your door. Okay. You can sit out through your door. Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
All right.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Is Eric here?
No. I gave this bill to them. Like I gave the LFO bill to Holy.
Good.
I like good bills to other members.
Yeah, thank you.
Go to the website, there's a card out of the front door.
We are ready whenever you are, Governor.
This is House Bill 1889. This measure creates the Office of the Corrections Ombuds and the Office of the Governor. This person is charged with providing information to inmates and their families, promoting public awareness and understanding of the rights and responsibilities of inmates, identifying system issues and responses for the governor and the legislature to act upon, and ensuring compliance with relevant statutes and policies. Thanks, Representative Pettigrew and Representative Goodman, for their work on this, and I'm signing this bill. Thank you all. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Governor.
Hey, man, good bill.
Good one.
Good bill. Good bill. It's going to help some families. Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys. Thanks again. We know this is going to work. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We introduced this, I'm with the Quakers. We introduced this 10 years ago.
Oh, yeah, no kidding. It's great.
It's been a while.
So it's like a fine wine. It was a good idea then. It's a better idea now.
It's been around for over 10 years.
Unanimous pass, but it got held up in the House.
Look, I think the Quakers have always been right, except when they gave us Richard Nixon. That was the only mistake the Quakers have ever made.
We've got a few more, but that's the one we get to take.
But we forgive.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for your work on this. Appreciate it. That's great. I know. Thank you. It's really great to see progress.
Thank you, Governor.
How you doing? Yeah, it's good to see you. Yeah, good to see you.
Hi, how are you? She's right there. That's Matt, right? How are you? Matt.
Good to see you.
Like it.
Thank you. I know I love it. Yeah.
Who's this?
What is your name? Can you let the governor know your name?
What's your name?
I am.
Hey, nice to meet you.
This is Charlotte.
This is Charlotte. Nice to meet you. Where do you live, Charlotte? Where did you go to school?
Yeah,
Kimmel? Are you a kindergarten or first grade? Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're here today.
Ready whenever you are, Governor.
This is House Bill 2610. Come on over here, Charlotte. You can stand over here. This is the Hunger-Free Students Bill of Rights Act. It prohibits schools from taking action at a student under the age of 15 to collect unpaid school meal fees and from stigmatizing a student who cannot pay for a school meal. It requires that schools annually distribute applications for free and reduced price meals to all student households and provide related language assistance to parents and guardians. It further requires school districts to notify parents or guardians of the negative balance of a student's school meal account within 10 days. Thanks, Representative Peterson, for this thoughtful bill, and I am signing this bill. Okay, now let's smile for Aaron, where he wants to take your picture. Hey, buddy, good to see you. Thank you, man. Thanks for what you did here.
Good job smiling.
Yeah, you got a good smiler here. Thanks, Charlotte. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Catch you later.
Thank you. Thank you. You have a cool pencil.
You gave up a field trip for today. Let's get her stuff.
Remember your purses, your coats, wallets, backpacks.
Hey, you bring good bills. Hey, man, long time no see. Yeah, we had a good session. We had a better session than anybody else. Okay, got it.
I told Dave Maston we'd work with him.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay? You can tell the governor your name.
You a bike racer? You look, bike racers wear the yellow jersey. You got a yellow jersey on. You look like the champion of the Tour de France. Do you ride bikes? Well, maybe later.
Deja vu.
Good to see you, man. Thank you. Good to see you.
Ready whenever you are, Governor.
This is House Bill 2709. This bill authorizes the Law Enforcement Officers and Firefighters Plan 2 Retirement Board to set the salary of the Executive Director in consultation with the Office of Financial Management Director and with notice to the Legislature, sponsored by Representative Holy, and I'm signing this bill. Okay, Robbie, let's smile here. All right. Thanks, bud. Thank you. Thank you. Take care. Okay, good luck. Good luck. Good to see you. How you been?
Doing well, thank you.
Keep your troops safe.
We're working on it. Thank you.
Good to see you. Yeah, you bet. Saw pileated woodpecker this weekend. They sure are fun. Neighbors Island. There's one or several hang out. There's a little wooded lot close to our house. Yeah, it's true. Hey there.
Ready whenever you
This is House Bill 2808. This measure does some cleanup in the Department of Licensing. It requires the Department of Licensing to renew a wholesale vehicle dealer license of a dealer who has held the license for the previous 6 years while phasing out this license category as required by a law passed last year, sponsored by Representative Kirby. All right. Thank you, Steve.
Okay, man.
Good luck.
Thank you.
It's your pen.
All righty.
It's your pen there.
Yeah.
Don't buy any stolen cars.
No.
Governor, you're it.
This is House Bill 3002. This measure appropriates $22 million from the budget stabilization account to the Department of Natural Resources for wildfire costs, sponsored by Representative Ormsby.
Back in the tourism business.
That's good. That's good. Hey, good to see you. Good to see you.
Tourism's big in the 19th.
Well, it should be. It's a beautiful place.
Fishing tourists, right? It's a little wet today.
It's just what keeps it the evergreen state.
Okay, so we do this one. Yeah, absolutely.
Jump in here.
Come on in.
Hi, Cindy.
Come in the middle, Scott.
You're short. Get in here. Well, I'm going to be with these ladies. I'm going to try and be visible over your shoulder, okay? I've worked hard on this for 7 years.
We are ready whenever you are, Governor.
This is Senate Bill 5251. This bill creates the Washington Tourism Marketing Authority to manage financial resources in contract for a statewide tourism marketing plan. It directs 0.2% of retail sales taxes collected on lodging, car rentals, and restaurants, up to $1.5 million in fiscal year 2019 and up to $3 million per biennium thereafter to fund it. While I'm signing the bill, I do have some concerns about the composition and the appointment process of the board, and I'm asking the legislature and the proponents to work with my office to resolve those issues. Next session, thanks for Senator Tacko and Representative Kandata for promoting tourism in the most beautiful state in the union.
That's right.
1, 2, and 3. And again, 1, 2, and
All right, thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, and we'll talk about the whole thing. You'll talk about it. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Yes, look forward to you spending all your vacations in Washington.
Absolutely. Just got back from Port Town. It took me 7 years.
Good to see you.
Governor Yakima says hi.
I'm going to be there Saturday.
Oh, you?
Near the Cesar Chavez celebration. Oh, yeah. Yeah. You should market it.
I vote for you.
It's a good tourism opportunity. Your work here, keep it up. Thank you. Keep it up.
Thank you.
Your vacation season. Leave Washington State. And hey, John, thanks for your advice. Thank you. We're going.
So we know you have a tight schedule, but we're having a little celebration at Mercado after you finish. Thank you. Okay, all right.
What time?
Well, we're going down there now for probably the next hour or so.
I'm a working stick.
I know, but so are we.
I got to sign some bills too, but thank you for the invite.
You know, I want you to know this lady right here, she's due to have her baby today.
Wow.
We've been fighting for this for a while.
Well, I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hope this works. See you. Yeah.
Thank you, Governor.
Thank you.
You come down to the beach and visit us again soon?
I'd like to. Nice place to hang out. Good to see you, man.
Do you mind if this little pup gets...
No, it's fine.
So on the other side, either side of the governor. Yeah. Okay. Roger, you be on the side. Either side.
I'll be on the left.
Either side.
Mike can be on the right.
We are ready whenever you are, Governor.
This is Senate Bill 5987. This bill clarifies that a municipal district or superior court judge, as a condition of pretrial release, may prohibit a defendant from possessing or consuming any intoxicating liquor or drugs if it is necessary to protect the public from harm. Sponsored by Senator Padden and Representative Clibbert. All right, thank you all.
Thank you. By the way, another good appointment. You've had 2 in a row. For
Good, how about that? All right, that's as many as I've made in Spokane.
Senator? Thank you. You're welcome.
So, Governor, you have a group of volunteer lawyers here who spent like 5 or 6 years of their lives writing this bill. 10 years, yeah. Well, and then another 5 years in the legislative
thank
process.
you so much.
Joe is the chair of the committee.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you, Governor.
Nice to meet you.
Okay, ready whenever you are.
This is Senate Bill 6175. This bill, requested by the Uniform Law Commission, will bring some uniformity and certainty to common interest communities. It establishes the Washington Uniform Common Interest Ownership Act for the formation and management of condominiums and homeowner associations and real estate cooperatives. I want to thank Senator Peterson and the folks behind me who have proved that there are publicly spirited lawyers abroad in the state of Washington.
Strangers it may seem.
Down behind the Senator Peterson. Just go up slowly. Okay. Down 3, 1, 2, and again 1, 2.
Thank you, fellas. Thank you for working so hard on this. How many of you guys live in condominiums?
I do.
Is he the expert?
Just the one.
Friends don't let
Friends don't let friends find out.
Thanks, Governor.
I hope peace breaks out in the condominium.
Okay, well, we all do.
Well, and the homeowner association, those are the places that really need it.
That's for sure.
Thank you, Governor.
Thank you.
chair. Some on the other side.
Hello.
Good to see you again.
Hello.
Ready? When you are.
This Senate Bill 6199, this measure was requested by the Department of Social and Health Services to establish a consumer-directed employer program. This is a private entity that contracts with the department to be the legal employer of individual providers for certain administrative purposes. This will give case managers more time to spend with clients. Thanks, Senator Cleveland and Representative Cody. All right. Let's smile for a second here. All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good idea. Yeah. I like to get people doing their number one task. Good to see you again. How you been? Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Ed.
Hi, how are you? Gather around the governor's chair, please.
Hello.
Here, someone over here. Thank you. We are ready.
Hello, Governor. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. This Senate Bill 6363, in this measure, the expiration date of June 30th, 2019 is removed. It allows the Washington State Department of Transportation to negotiate a franchise agreement for the future use of the Milwaukee Road corridor. This would allow a connecting rail line between a Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railway main line across Stampede Pass and the Union Pacific Railroad main line across the Tri-Cities to Spokane. Thanks, Senator Chase. Thank you. Thank you. Take care. Keep the train on the tracks.
Exactly. Got to preserve those rail lines.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll do that when he's done with the photo.
Okay. All right. That'd be good because he wants a picture with it.
Okay. So she wants a picture, another picture after we're done with you signing.
He says, give him the hat and then get a picture.
Okay, we are ready whenever you are. Okay.
This Senate Bill 6368. This bill was requested by the Department of Agriculture. It clarifies the use of funds from the Fair Fund and provides that a fair does not lose its funding if it is not held because of a natural disaster. Thanks, Senator Warnick and Representative Blake.
There you go. 1, 2, 1, 2. And again, 1, 2, and
All right. Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And so you want.
You want to put this on or just hold it?
I'll hold it. Do you want to get a picture with it?
Yes.
Okay.
He wants it.
I feel badly though.
Okay. I know. That's why I said give it to him. Make him feel guilty.
I do
No.
feel guilty. You're going to get our picture together?
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. That's a nice hat.
It is.
Yeah.
It's a great hat. We heard you collect them, so.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks again for that.
Thank you. You bet. You bet.
And keep drinking my wine.
I know. I recognize quality.
Which one?
Okay, we're gonna. Okay. Yeah, I think I heard that. Yeah. Okay.
We are ready.
This Senate Bill 6369. This bill is requested by the Department of Agriculture to align state law with federal law on livestock traceability. Under it, it will no longer be necessary to obtain a certificate of veterinary inspection for animals transported from out of state to inspected feedlots. Thanks, Senator Warnick and Representative Blake.
Thank you.
guys.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Thank you.
Enjoy the afternoon. Thanks, Judy.
Thanks, Governor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
gather around the governor's chair, please. Thank you. We are ready.
This is Senate Bill 6393. This was a bill requested by the Department of Labor and Industries. It allows the department to use different calculation methods for state fund and self-insured pension liabilities. It will allow the gradual phase-in of costs to self-insurers. Thanks, Senator Braun and Representative Sells. Thank you all. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. This is Senate Bill 6399. This measure requires the Collaborative for the Advancement of Telemedicine to develop recommendations on reimbursing for telemedicine at the same rate as if a provider delivered services in person for treatment of certain conditions such as diabetes and opioid dependence. The recommendations are due to legislature by December 1, 2018, sponsored by Senator Becker. Yeah, it is, indeed. Makes sense. It makes sense. Hello.
Okay, Representative Kagi is so sorry she can't be
Well, she hardly ever shows up. It's terrible.
one of these absent legislators.
Yeah, this is Senate Bill 6407, requested by the Department of Social and Health Services. It eliminates the requirement that child welfare services be provided by supervising agencies. With the creation of the Department of Children, Youth, and Families, the requirement no longer necessary. Thanks, Senator Darneal and Representative Kagi.
Thank
you so much.
Thank you. I'll give her a pen.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll give her that pen.
She doesn't have any hardly at all.
I know. Thank you.
This is Senate Bill 6408. This bill is an outgrowth of the deliberations of the Task Force on Use of Body-Worn Cameras, which endeavored to balance the interests of transparency and privacy. Among several provisions, it removes the July 1st, 2019 expiration date for laws governing body-worn cameras. It also removes the restriction that body-worn camera provisions of the Public Records Act apply only to recordings from covered jurisdictions between June 9th, 2016 and July 1, 2019, sponsored by Senator Padden and Representative Hansen. Thanks for their work on this complex issue.
Right, thank you, Governor. It's too bad Lou's not here.
Yeah, well, he's working hard.
Yeah.
Taking care of his constituent, the governor.
PFAS, and yeah.
Is that singular PFA?
singular, PFAS, right?
Yeah, PFAS.
Yes.
What's the S stand?
It's perfluoroalkyl substances, but don't try to probably say that.
I just know singular.
Sorry.
I don't want to reference you.
We are ready whenever you are, Governor.
With this bill, Washington becomes the first state to restrict the use of firefighting foams that contain potentially harmful chemicals that are known as PFASs. These chemicals have contaminated municipal water systems and private wells across our state, creating a mess that is hard to clean up. We know that firefighting foams are available without these chemicals, and a switch to these safer alternatives is needed to protect our drinking water and residents. This bill requires that the presence of these chemicals to be disclosed at the time of sale. It also restricts the manufacture, distribution, and sale of foam designed for flammable liquid fires that contain a PFAS material beginning July 1, 2020. Thanks, Senator Vandewey and Representative Peterson. Thanks for everybody's far-sighted work on this. All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
Be safe. Be safe. Thank you. Be safe. Thank you. First in the nation.
Yeah.
Good to see you guys. Thank you. Thanks for what you're doing.
Thanks again.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks for having leadership.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for showing leadership.
We're going to send this back at the RIFF office. They're going to be really happy to see this.
Good. Well, you guys are leading as always.
First in the nation is
Yeah, first in the nation. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you, Governor.
Go get them. Thanks, man. Thank you.
Governor?
Yeah, may take a break in a couple minutes.
Okay, sure.
Hello there. How are you?
Hey, Jake.
Good to see you, Governor.
How are you?
See? Look who's on the other side.
Hi. Careful. Sneaking up on me again.
Like a regular, you know.
I stand where. No, you're first. You're first.
We are ready whenever you
This
are.
Senate Bill 6437. This bill requires that a $6 fee be assessed on each recreational vehicle application for registration. Proceeds must be deposited into the abandoned recreational vehicle disposal account, from which up to 15% each biennium may be used for administrative expenses of the Department of Licensing. Thanks, Senator King and Representative Fye. Thank you so much. Thanks, Judy. Good to see you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Judy. Good to see you here. Glad you keep coming back. I hope you will continue to do so.
Burns towing it to Tacoma.
Oh, thank you. I know, yeah.
We appreciate everything you did. Just know
Thank
that.
you so much. That's great.
Okay.
Thank you, Governor.
Okay.
Thank you,
Good to see you.
Go Rams.
Good to see you. Yeah, go Rams, man. How you doing? Good to see you.
You got an extra pen?
I'm sure I do. I'm sure I do, man.
I like your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Hey, David.
How are you?
Good. Good
See you, Governor.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Thank you for signing this bill.
Yes.
This
the
is the
least I
best
could
bill of the
do.
session.
This is the best bill of the session.
The best bill. Senator Brown.
Thank you.
Fortunately, Sharon couldn't be here, but it is a good one.
We are ready whenever you are.
This Senate Bill 6452. This bill concerns parents and youth who seek appropriate mental health services. It requires the Health Care Authority to convene a group to develop an alternative funding model for the Partnership Access Line and a strategy to ensure that expanded PAL services do not duplicate managed care organization requirements. It also creates the PAL for Moms and Kids 2-year pilot program. PAL is a free phone consultation service for primary care providers to reach out to pediatric psychiatrists. Thanks, Senator Brown, for this thoughtful bill. Everybody?
Thank you. Thanks, Governor.
Thank you, guys. I gotta make a call. Excuse me just for a couple minutes here.
Thank you, Governor.
Would you like me to take over?
Hello.
Hi.
Jay, how are you?
Nice to meet you, Governor.
How are you, Jay? How are you doing? Janice, Jay, how are you? Jay? What's your name? Namdi. Namdi, good to see you again. This is Senate Bill 6462. This bill will make sure that people who buy a home with a heating oil tank will be notified by the seller that they are entitled to no-cost insurance in case that tank leaks. It's great for the homeowner and the environment. Thanks for Senator Angel. Thank you, guys. Take care. Thanks for taking care of homeowners and the environment.
Ready whenever you are, Governor.
This is Senate Bill 6474. This legislation is a result of a conversation about year-round schools at an Educational Opportunity Gap Oversight and Accountability Committee meeting. It directs the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction to create a pilot project for one or more state tribal education compact schools. These could modify requirements on school attendance, school year length, and assessments. Sponsored by Senator McCoy. Hey, John.
Hey.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you
Now
so
Gail's
much.
gotta go to work.
Yeah, now you go to work. That's right.
Gather around the governor. Some on the other side, some in the middle. Come on in closer. Yeah. Ready whenever you
This
are.
Senate Bill 6491, this measure expands assisted outpatient mental health treatment after April 1st, 2018 to include substance use disorder treatment among several provisions. This will offer treatment options to those with a mental disorder and keep them in the community, sponsored by Senator O'Ban. Go in peace. Take care. Good to see you. Good to see you.
Governor, you're in.
This is Senate Bill 6493. This bill concerns the athletic departments at the state colleges and universities that may have budgets running in the red and bills some accountability and transparency. It requires the boards of trustees or regents at these institutions to approve in an open public meeting expenditures over $250,000 and transfers of funds in this category over $250,000, sponsored by Senator Billig. Okay. Hello.
Hi.
Nice to see you. Nice to see you. Good to see you. How are you? Good to see you. This Senate Bill 6514, subject to funding, this measure requires the creation of a behavioral health and suicide prevention training curriculum by a unit at the University of Washington School of Social Work, sponsored by Senator Brown and Representative Orwell. Happy to sign this great idea. Thank you so much, all.
Thank you.
Take care of our people.
Thank you.
How you doing?
Good to see you.
My peers
Thank you.
are getting the chances that they need to
Thank you.
be productive citizens.
I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate your leadership.
Thank you.
Makes a big difference. Yeah, good luck.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you again.
Hey, guys. Yeah, you bet.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Good to see you.
I've already missed two of my bills.
Marilyn, how are you? Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. I have a little constituent who lost your pin.
Uh-oh.
And he made me promise, he's 10 years old.
Yeah?
And he made me promise to ask you for another pin.
Oh, like which kind of pin?
You know, that kind.
Oh, pen. Oh,
Yeah,
pen.
yeah.
Oh, pen.
Not
Great.
pin,
Okay.
Yeah.
This Senate Bill 6544, this bill will help the legislature make informed public policy in response to rapid changes in the workforce. Subject funding, it creates the Future of Work Task Force supported by the Workforce Training and Education Coordinating Board to address issues related to changes in technology industry and the workforce. It makes recommendations to the governor and legislature, which are due by December 1, 2019. Thanks, Senator Chase, for thinking into the future. Thanks, Marilyn. Okay, there's one for you. One for your friend.
One for my little friend.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, really? Hey.
Ways and Means and Transportation.
How's your support?
We are ready, Governor.
This is Senate Bill 6614. This measure reduces the property tax increase from last year. It shrinks the state property tax levy from $2.70 per thousand of the assessed value to $2.40 per thousand of assessed value for next year's taxes. Thanks, Senator Mullet. Thank you. Thank you.
I'll make sure Senator Mullen gets a pen.
You can't have one.
You get the next one.
You get the next one, yep.
It's just my first one, you know I've been.
Yeah, I know.
Morning, gather around the governor's chair, please. Thank you.
Hey, Steve. Hey there.
Okay, we are ready.
This Senate Bill 6137, among a number of provisions applying to car manufacturers, this measure requires a manufacturer to compensate its new motor vehicle dealers for labor and parts needed for recall repairs and to pay compensation while parts are not reasonably available at a rate of at least 1.75% of the average trade-in value per month and prorated for a partial month, among other changes. Thanks, Senator Conway and Representative Kirby. Steve. All right. Hey, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. You got one. Yeah. You got one. Thank you. Good luck. Good luck.
Governor, we have a veto message. Remember, you're going to sign just a message in here.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah. It absolutely is. Of course. I your blog about it, yes. My first transpo budget is chairs.
That's true. I shouldn't be here though.
It is the transpo. Good. electric ferrying is in here, $600,000 for the electric.
Come on up a little bit closer. Yeah, come on. Governor, we have a little one right here, just so you know.
Hi, how are you?
My name is Ben.
What's your name? Ben? Good to see you, buddy. Nice to see you.
Whenever you are, Governor.
This is Senate Bill 6106. This is the supplemental transportation budget. Among the many highlights, it continues funding of the Connecting Washington package. It adds capacity on State Route 167 from Puyallup to the SR 18 interchange, moves forward with the design and construction of the new Olympic Region headquarters on Marvin Road, operates the MV Hyack while Olympic-class vessels are being serviced, expands capacity at the Department of Licensing Officers to speed processing of enhanced driver's licenses and enhanced identity cards for Real ID compliance, moves us forward towards a conversion to electric ferry boats. However, I'm vetoing one section. Please refer to the veto lever for those details. Thanks to sponsor Senator Hobbs, Representative Cliburn, who is now retiring with total accomplishments of everything she ever set out to do with this bill. Judy, congratulations. Congratulations. Thank you. Nice day to see you. Going out in a blaze of glory. Hey, Jake. Thank you.
Sure, yeah. Can I get a special picture?
Sure, sure.
Oh, okay. We're doing a staff photo.
Yeah.
Okay. 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 Aaron, we're going to do a staff photo. Yeah. You're an honorary member.
And everyone else that's not in the photo can stand off the side.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Did I do this right?
Yep. Just double check. Yes, you did, Governor. Yeah, we did all this inside.
Just
You right here. Aren't you guys supposed to go right there?
stand with this group.
Governor Inslee. These three gentlemen on your left here. Good to see you. Our wheelchair accessible taxi operators.
Yeah, good to see you guys. Well, you guys are special guys in a lot of lives. That's a great service.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Ready whenever you are, Governor.
This is the Senate Bill 6095, the supplemental capital budget.
Hold on, Governor.
This is still
This is just a picture.
Oh, we're doing a picture here. Okay, here we go.
Thank
All right, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
After all we went through to get the capital budgets done, I would want to get it done too. So
Yeah. Waited a long time to get it done.
yeah, we did. Oh, excuse me. Hey, Judy, Judy, get it. Why don't you grab the other side?
Oh, okay.
Judy's going to come to the other side here. Hey, I'm so glad you're here. Thank you. Glad you guys are here. Glad you're here.
Now we are ready.
Well, I was ready to do a capital budget 2 minutes ago. In fact, I was ready a year ago. But now we have the supplemental capital budget. Chief among its features are $25 million for community-based behavioral health facilities and nearly $18 million in state hospital investments. Reinstates funding for state parks capital projects. $10 million for projects benefiting the southern resident killer whales. More funding for affordable housing, including $5.1 million for the Mount Baker property cleanup project. $46.5 million for K through 12 school construction projects across the state. $20 million in design and infrastructure preservation funding for the public colleges and universities. And $6.6 million for projects with cost increases caused by last year's delay in passing the capital budget. A good lesson for the future, I hope. However, I'm vetoing several sections. Please refer to the veto letter for those details. Thanks, Senator Frock and Representative Theringer for getting this across the finish line. And Ms. Small. Thank you all.
Thank you.
David, thank you so
Thanks
much.
so much. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, Judy. Thank you. Good to see you. Good to see you all. I'm so subtle.
Yeah, you are. Okay, we're gonna do a staff photo after this group. No one told me that. No, we can do that.
All the way down for this.
I don't know what we're doing here.
Drew has the pins right here. You exit out the rear door, you get your pins.
Do you know who was Bainbridge Strong Student of the Year this year? This is the student who represents the values of the Bainbridge School District of empathy, compassion, teamwork.
So we're doing a staff photo?
Zoe Inslee, kindergartner.
We're doing a staff photo.
Oh, I'm embarrassed. I can't remember. She's at kindergarten at Wilkes, and we asked them. She asked them why did she win, and they said because she takes care of this disabled student in her class.
Awesome.
That's why they gave it to her.
Thank you. Governor, we're doing a staff photo.
Okay. Hey, thank you all. Thanks for all the work here.
You have the blue pen? We need the blue pen glove out of your pocket. Yeah, I'm gonna clap. Yep. Yep, that's good. Check this. Should be good.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Okay. Every word.
I read it. It looks good.
Very nice.
Do you know I read the healthcare reform bill, 1,300 pages, when I voted for it at the Obamacare, and I found a typo in it. I actually did. I did. I voted for it anyway.
Come up front.
Back up a little. Can I back up just a bit?
Hey, buddy. How you doing? I'm Jay. What's your name? Karsten. Karsten. Who's this here? Megan. What's your name? Lincoln. Karsten and Lincoln. Hey, Dad. Oh yeah, sure. Good luck with that. This is the supplemental budget 6032. This is the bill that has its most notable feature is that $970 million is provided to fully fund the state's basic education obligations under the McCleary case in the next school year, 1 year earlier than provided for in the biennial budget passed this year. In honor of Karsten and Lincoln here, can we just have a round of applause for this? They were the inspiration for this. The Supreme Court were only tangential, so I really appreciate Karsten and Lincoln's leadership for this. This bill makes significant investments in the state's behavioral health system, including the expansion of services and communities, improvements at the state mental hospitals, and fighting the opioid crisis. It includes money to protect southern resident orcas and supports work to develop a long-term orca recovery plan. It includes funding to strengthen the state's earthquake tsunami preparedness, bolster efforts to prevent oil spills, and increase the state's wildfire prevention and response capabilities. However, I'm vetoing a number of sections. Please refer to the veto letter for those details. I want to thank Senator Rolfus and Representative Ormsby for their outstanding work in getting this bill to my desk in a timely manner. They really did a great job in a very difficult, complex issue. And thanks for all legislators for contributing to this work. And I am very happily signing this bill. The deed is done. So, thank you. Smile for me right there. Here we go.
And 3. And again, 1, 2, and.
Thank you all. Thank you very much. Thank you, Senator. Senator.
We can do a staff photo after we do.
Oh, okay. Great.
All right. Thanks, Kate.
Appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming in here. We just walked by.
Pass one over. Ron?
How are you?
Hey, Drew. Did Norm Johnson say he's not running in?
Apparently, that's what I saw today.
Okay, this looks good here. Here we go. Okay, ready? Thank you, guys. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for bringing leadership here.
Oh, yes.
Thank you so
I'm very glad to be here.
Oh, yeah. Isn't that a cool picture? You guys look so good. You look like governors to me.
Oh, yeah. That was fun. Yeah.
You look like governors for sure. Yeah, I'd be honored.
Did you already do it?
Well, let's get a picture. Aaron, we'll do a staff picture.
Here, Matt, you Can you do our staff photo?
Thank you all. We're going to get another picture of these guys?
Staff photo,
Huh?
please.
Get this? He's the Assistant Secretary of Funny Hats, isn't he? Isn't he the Director of the Department of Funny Silly Hats?
Micro Enterprises would like a picture with you.
Well, that's good. Let me get this crew in here first. You getting your team in here? Yeah, let's get them in. Let's get them in. Hey, I've been seeing you drilling behind your back and between your legs lately. You got some great moves, man. Great moves. Cross between Michael Jordan and Isaiah Thomas. I don't remember dribbling like that at Red Shield Boys and Girls Club. I just don't remember that. Oh, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Okay.
Okay, is everybody in here who wants to be in here?
Governor, we have a staff member that wants to get a picture.
Okay. All right, let's get Dylan in here. I should have worn my racing hat.
Ready? 1, 2, 3. It's going to take like a whole bunch. I think we're good.
Thank you.
I don't need that. I can, seriously, I've done this. I'm good.
Thank you. I'll try. Okay. His last day is Friday.
Can I say something? I'm going to miss Sharon Nelson. She was a tremendous leader. I've worked with a lot of leaders in my time in the state legislature and in Congress, and she was just one of the best. She was just a remarkable person who could build consensus. She had her heart always looking to the future, and I just really loved working with her, and I'm going to miss her. And I talked to her today, and I told her that I know I'd be in deep, deep trouble if I tried to talk her out of it. And she said yes, because I was standing between her and a week in Legoland with her young grandkids. So I was respecting her right to retire after a tremendous career. But I just want to tell you, I'm really gonna miss her.
The budget is signed. The next step is a report that's to be given to the court by April 9th to show the progress the state has made on McCleary. Are you confident that what you signed today will be sufficient and that this case will be over?
I think there is every reason to believe that, but I always say that with the caveat that the court gets to make the final decision in that sense. But it just seems to me that, at least in my understanding of the requirements of the decision, it has been met, I believe, in full, not only in spirit, but in financial support. So I would certainly hope so, and I think there's every reason to believe that.
Governor, can you talk about your decision to sign Senate Bill 6199, the individual provider bill? I know a lot of Republicans have asked for you to veto that, and they see it as a way for unions to skirt a court ruling and sort of change their union structure, and just wondered if you could comment on that.
Well, we've talked about this general sense before, but we think it provides a modern way of providing these services that is most effective for the people they serve, and is consistent with what is done in a lot of other states. It's not anything particularly unique about it, and it's driven by efficiencies and a good way to serve people. So we stand by that.
Do you support SEIU being able to have sort of a closed shop situation where they get more agency fees and things like that based out of this? Is that something that you thought would be a good outcome of this?
I support the legislation. I'm not sure that I understand the full nature of your question, but I certainly support the legislation.
Governor, can you talk more broadly about where to go next with education, funding, and policy in the state in the coming years, now that it seems like McCleary is drawing to a close?
Well, this is not the finish of our educational journey. There are many things we hope to do in the future across the spectrum. Starting with early child education, we want to continue our effort to expand both access and quality. We're well on the way to do that. In the K through 12 system, we're very much looking forward to integrating the system with the career-connected learning system so that we have students who are connected to their careers much earlier in their program. And as you know, we've started this apprenticeship program that we hope will service students while they're in high school, and we've just started that. We've had our first 12 in Tacoma and a larger group next year. On the higher ed standpoint, we are very much interested in continuing to improve our financial aid to students and reduce the cost of college, as well as providing more access to some of the really high demand skilled fields that we have. So we have a lot more work to do in education, and I made sort of a quip on this, but our motivation has always been the kids, and we believe that by satisfying the McCleary decision, we've satisfied a higher purpose, which is our moral responsibility to our kids and our grandchildren, and I feel good about that because this is going to result in much more equal opportunity for students across the state of Washington. And as a person who has known both parts of the state, having lived in Selah and then in Kitsap County, I've seen both sides of the state and both sides of the economic perspective. and the thought that students in, Toppenish and Mattawa are going to have an equal shot of the kids in Mercer Island, Bellevue, that's a beautiful thing, and I'm happy that we've achieved this, and I think it is a major accomplishment for the state, and it's going to have meaningful, I believe, real-term impacts for students, particularly those of maybe special needs. So we're not done. We're not done with special education issues, too. I know there are remaining issues to make sure that our special education students across the state receive what they need. I think there might be some more work to be done in that regard. So no, we're not finished, but this is a big achievement.
One last quick question.
Governor, do you support Bob Ferguson's decision to challenge the Trump administration on asking about citizenship on the 2020 census?
Well, you answered that question by the premise of the question, which was, would I support Bob Ferguson challenging the Trump administration? I don't need to know a lot more about the circumstances. But yes, and let me say that this is the Trump administration's effort to decrease the effectiveness of the census is part and parcel of a really sickness that is abroad in the land, which is a real challenge to democracy, and that's to suppress voting of people who might not be in the upper income scale and to suppress who we count in the census. It's the same sickness, which is an anti-democratic effort to reduce participation by people in our democracy. And we've gone the opposite direction. We adopted the largest suite of programs to help increase access to the ballot box and increase participation in democracy of any state. In fact, we're the only state in the country, except California, to have all four of the mechanisms to increase people's access to the ballot box, while other states, and there is one party that's promoting this, have effort to suppress voting. And now this administration is also trying to suppress the people we count in this census, and that's the reason for it. And there's just no surprise. This is consistent with a large effort to suppress participation in democracy by people who may not share the characteristics that people want to see. And I think it's vile. I think it's unjust. I think it's undemocratic. And I think we are right to challenge that, along with California, and probably other states are as well. But again, I want to put this in. This is not an isolated incident. This is a long-term strategy to, frankly, reduce the number of people who are in minority communities or who are in low-income communities to vote. And I just think that's wrong. And unfortunately, it's taken place in a lot of places. We decided to go the opposite direction. I'm very proud of our state to have the most accessible and comprehensive voting laws put in place this year with our Voter Rights Acts. Thank you.